Hey, it's Josh.
Hey Josh, this is Jessie. How's it going?
Good. How are you, Jesse?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you for taking the call. I know, obviously tomorrow's Thanksgiving. I definitely appreciate your time, sir.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for asking me.
Not a problem. So I want to, right off the bat, I want to know what type of experience you got working on 31. I know you did the documentary, but I wanted to know how that helped you grow as a filmmaker.
I mean, in so many ways, I was very fortunate to have the access that I did on that documentary. So, it was traditionally when they do the behind the scenes stuff like that, especially with Rob's stuff, they usually just have someone from the studio or from the distributor come out and just sort of be a fly on the wall. And that's kind of how it started. And I got to know Rob kind of quickly, and, I think he gained a quick trust in me. And so I got access to him personally and to, sort of his side, his role in the film, if you will. And so because of that, I learned, so much more than I would have if I would have just been there as a hired gun from the studio just to create some, 20-minute behind the scenes featurette. But I didn't want to do that. The way I pitched it to Rob was, I want to do a documentary. I want to really showcase you as a director, showcase the whole filmmaking process. And he totally dug that. And because of that, I was able to see things that I normally wouldn't have been able to see. Really, that was the first time I was ever on a movie set, ever. So I got to see that and be with him while he was talking with all the department heads and the actors and producers. And, so it was really getting a front row seat to how an indie film is made. But so much of that. And then, after the fact, we did the interviews a year later at his house, and I was able to, look at the hundreds of hours of footage that I had and come up with questions that I, as a filmmaker, really wanted to know the answers to, that you can't really ask when you're in the heat of the moment on set. So I just made pages and pages of questions and talking points about things that I, as an aspiring filmmaker, found interesting, or wanted to learn more about. And so I just sat at his house for 3 days and did the interviews. So that was like a whole nother part of the learning experience. It's crazy.
I was curious though, was that how you got hooked up with Poncho?
No, yeah, I met Poncho on the set of 31. I didn't even know who Poncho was before that. But we met on the set of 31, and then, kind of just figured out quickly that we have a lot in common. And, we stayed in touch after production on 31 wrapped, and we just always knew we wanted to work together on something. And so Candy Corn was our next project.
And I guess, when did you pitch the movie to him? How did it fall into place as far as getting him on board, and then getting some of the other notable actors like Todd and Souls and Gaines? What was that timeline like?
So Poncho was the first one casted at all, and it was more of just, hey, let's do this thing. And he was, Poncho and I had been in touch and became friends over the course of, close to 2 years from the time 31 wrapped to when we started talking about doing Candy Corn. So it was just a given that he would be a part of it because we were friends and really respected each other and wanted to work together. So we did a crowdfunding campaign, and Poncho was the only actor involved and the only character I had even written at that point, actually, aside from the idea of what would eventually become the character of Jacob. But Poncho's character was the only one that I wrote any sort of dialogue or anything for. And so he came to where I live in Ohio, and we shot this crowdfunding scene. And we raised a little bit of money, but not enough to make the movie. And then it was about 2 years from that time, a little over 2 years from the time we did the crowdfunding campaign, that we actually got all the rest of the funding to finish the film. And so having him on board is actually how we got Courtney Gaines. They had the same manager at the time. And so he had mentioned, having access to Courtney and what would I think about something for him. And so at that time I was writing this, the actual feature script, and I loved the idea of having Courtney as the sheriff. I had never seen him in a role like that. Obviously I knew him as Malachi from Children of the Corn. And so I thought that would be crazy to have somebody like him, just in our movie, because it was really, at that point, still just very much something that a bunch of friends were doing for fun. And so he came on board, and then he loved what we shot. We still didn't have the money to finish the whole movie. So when he found that out and he saw what we had shot and I edited, he really loved it and volunteered to come on as a producer. And he helped us raise a little bit more money. And so that's how the production happened. It was piecemealed out over 2 years' time. But having Courtney on is what ultimately got PJ Souls, I think, at least attracted to it. My friend Ben Scrivens, who owns the company Fright Rags, he's an executive producer on Candy Corn. And so I knew that he had worked with PJ, and Justin Mabry, another one of our executive producers who owns Trick or Treat Studios, told Ben that I was really interested in having PJ in the film. Well, we had found out that she wasn't really doing a lot, that she was basically, retired from acting and just doing shows and whatever. So Ben pitched it to her, and she said she'd check out the script on behalf of Ben. She loved it, came on board, and then ultimately that's why Tony came on board, was because of the existing ensemble. At least I'll say that's why it got his attention, because of the existing ensemble. And then, of course, he wanted to read the script. Fortunately for me, he loved the script and also wanted to come on as an executive producer because he really believed in it. So, yeah, it was a lot of work, a lot of time, pulling favors and, just getting into the right hands and bugging people until eventually got what I wanted.
Yeah, you mentioned the crowdfunding. From what I remember, it started out on Indiegogo and then it moved to its own website.
Yeah, the crowdfunding was a mess. Honestly, it was such a bad experience, and I don't remember every single detail about it because it was so long ago, and there were so many hands involved that aren't, were never a part of the project after basically the day crowdfunding was over. So, yeah, I mean, we did the Indiegogo thing, and the fees were really high, and so we just moved it to a standalone site. But it's still, yeah, I mean, we raised enough money in that campaign to do 2 days of shooting, and that was it. And I'm very appreciative of everyone that did contribute to it. Just unfortunately wasn't enough to make the movie.
Yeah, I think that was the first time it got my attention because it was, I believe, near the top as far as things to check out. I wanted to mention that I went to candycornmovie.com earlier, and it actually sells Air Jordans on there now. I thought you could kick out of that.
Yeah.
So we'll direct people to your Instagram.
Yeah, and you can get the movie on joshhasty.com. You can get the movie, you can get all the, merchandise, everything. I 100% own, the rights to the film and the merch and stuff, and so I've, made a point to try to make everything as accessible as possible, and, yeah, it's not me selling Air Jordans. Sorry, everybody.
So let's get to the meat. I kind of want to know where the idea came from, the actual narrative. I did read that you kind of got the inspiration from the season of Halloween, which I really think is a pretty cool influence to have. But I kind of wanted to know more how the narrative came to be and what you were kind of going for ultimately.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. The season of Halloween, but it's the season of Halloween as I remember it as a kid, and a big part of that was watching slasher films. So really, the inspiration was, at its core, to create my love letter to the season and to the genre, but from my perspective. So it's not really, Candy Corn isn't necessarily a traditional slasher. There's not lots of, blood and guts and naked babes and all that sort of stuff that people, I think, terms that people use to describe slashers. But it's the things that I remember. It's the tone, the atmosphere of those films. I grew up in the Midwest in Ohio, and so that's, when you would watch John Carpenter's Halloween, that's what it was like where I lived. It felt like Haddonfield. So that was the feeling I always had, and I wanted to try to inject that into something that was new as far as stories go and as far as characters go, but I didn't want to do something that was necessarily trying to reinvent the wheel. I really wanted to pay homage to all of those films that I loved growing up, that scared me and that I would eventually fall in love with, from Halloween to Phantasm and, obviously all the Friday the 13th franchises and all those big franchises, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then I think from a filmmaking standpoint, my execution was really more sort of inspired, I guess, sort of inherently by the films that I've since come to love and respect. That would be things like Rosemary's Baby and, a lot of these sort of, they're horror, but they're more thriller and almost really drama as far as story arc goes. And so that's what Candy Corn was. Candy Corn was my first opportunity to create a real film, with real filmmakers, as opposed to just a bunch of family and friends doing favors. It was a bunch of filmmakers doing favors. But it was to do something in my hometown where I grew up, which is where we shot it, that sort of told the story of when I fell in love with the genre as a kid, all the way through to where I am now, loving cinema, and rolling that into one, 85-minute thing. And so it's hard to really pinpoint, specifically, this was my inspiration, because it really is all of those things. And I don't necessarily want to always do horror films. I think I probably, I've got a ton of horror scripts that I would love to do, but it's about filmmaking for me. And so that can transcend across different genres and subgenres, even within horror. And so Candy Corn for me was I felt like my one chance to take the little bit of money that we could scrape together, these connections that I had made over the years, coming off the success of the 31 documentary, and just do something that I could say, all right, that's my entry into the slasher genre, love it or hate it. This is how I see it. Doing the best I can with the little bit of resources and money I had, and package it up and put it out there so I can move on, into the other forms of cinema that I look very forward to creating.
What I really liked about this film, I would probably say the most, was how it felt classic and timeless at the same time. To me, it felt like something you would just randomly turn on, like USA Up All Night. But then at the same time, you never really set a date. It was like middle America, world, and because of which it just felt very relatable. And I feel like that's something that's kind of hard to pull off. I can't really think of a lot of movies that do that as well as you did. And I think the environment plays a huge part in selling that idea, which is kind of exactly what you were saying about how you did your hometown. It kind of reminded you of Haddonfield, which I really like that as a viewer, and it's pretty cool to hear that was intentional from your perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, that was. Atmosphere is everything, and the films I'm inspired by are the films that I think sort of paved the way for filmmakers now to be able to make horror films, especially. They were all about atmosphere. And it's funny when you go back and watch, which I've done recently, Candyman and John Carpenter's Halloween in the Fog. The atmosphere was everything. And Tony Todd is in Candyman for maybe 10 minutes of the original Candyman, and he's not even in the first basically 40 minutes, it seems like. But it was this atmosphere, this menacing, you knew there was a presence eventually coming, and it's balancing that with the atmosphere of the location, like what you're talking about now. And that's huge to me, because that's how I remember it. That's when you're growing up in these rural streets in Ohio. There's something about it. There's something spooky about what could be around the corner. It was. I want to say it was difficult to capture that, but really it wasn't, because we shot it there. We shot Bramford's house in the movie is the house that I grew up in. That town is the town that I grew up in. So I think maybe subconsciously I shot it in a way that captured it the way I saw it, which is the way I wanted people to feel, if that makes sense. But yeah, location is everything, and that the locations we had in Candy Corn lent a tremendous amount of atmosphere in the film, for sure.
So, and like horror, I can't help but think that circuses and sideshows probably impacted you as well growing up. Were you a fan of carnivals and clowns and those sorts of things as well, or was that just kind of a part of the narrative?
Yeah, I think it was just a part of it inherently. It's funny because I never really got into clowns and carnival-y stuff. It was never really my thing. And I think that's a part of why, it's important and it's cool, and I do dig it. But I think that's a part of why it's not very prominent in Candy Corn. When people would first start talking about it, and they assumed it was a carnival-y movie, no, you guys are going to be disappointed if you think it's a carnival film, because it's really not. The backdrop is Grove Hill. It's the small Midwestern town. The carnival is, and that's in the narrative of, in the script as well. The carnival is passing through. It's not a staple there, which I guess is, like you just said, how it was for me. It was always there, but it definitely wasn't front and center.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on. So I'm pretty positive. I saw the initial Indiegogo. I saw the transition to the website. I remember seeing flyers at Texas Frightmare. I saw press releases in my inbox all the time. From start to finish, it seems like a long and daunting process. What's it like, finally physically holding that film in your hand and just, looking at it and saying, I can, on to the next one, what is that for you?
Yeah. It's weird, because in order to get something like this done, you have to have, I don't know what the word is. It's more than confidence. It can often be confused with arrogance, but you have to have such a certainty and a drive to know that it's going to happen, because at certain points you will be told by everyone around you, and it'll be creeping in your subconscious that, am I actually going to get this done? Is this, because it is. It's a long freaking journey. It seems impossible at times. But I think because of that, over that time, I just convinced myself, this is going to happen. This has got to. So it's sort of a little victory for me to be able to hold it, in my hands and see people watching it, and go to these Q&As at movie theaters across the country, and, have people engaging with it. It's this is the reward to being so stubborn that you ignore everyone else around you. They tell you that this makes no sense, that it's not feasible, at what cost. I mean, I spent so much money out of my pocket and savings to get this movie done. I mean, truly was a passion project for me in every way. I mean, I didn't make a dime. I spent so much money to get this thing done, and it feels great because it's like, this is worth it. And it's worth it because people are reacting, people are engaging, whether they love it or hate it, they're talking about it, and it's sparking some sort of emotion. And that's all you can really ask for as an artist, for your work to do that.
And I guess that leads us to, like, where do we go from here? Is there any talks of, I know it's a little soon, but Candy Corn 2, or are you working on another project? What can you say?
Well, I've said before that I wrote Candy Corn as a trilogy. I when I started writing, ideas were just flowing like crazy, and it got to the point where it was too long of a script for us to ever shoot. And so I started taking some of the stuff a lot of stuff with Bishopgate, for instance, the relationship between Bishopgate and Dr. Death.
Yeah.
I started putting that into sort of another script. Because I would go back, it's easy right now to look at Halloween and Friday the 13th and Phantasm and Candyman and all these amazing franchises and remember them for what they are collectively, right? But if you look at the first installment of every franchise, ignoring everything that came after it, go back in time to 1978 and watch John Carpenter's Halloween, or go back and watch the first Candyman or the first Friday the 13th. There was a lot of unanswered questions. They were not as developed. It was the seed of what would eventually become these iconic franchises.
Yeah.
And so, not that I, am saying Candy Corn is going to be the next major franchise. That would be amazing. But my point was more to pay homage to that, not to the epic franchise. Not be self-aware and make Candy Corn just seem like Jacob is the next big killer. But go back and write a love letter to the original Halloween, to the original Candyman, the original Phantasm, the original Friday the 13th. And I'll remind people, and obviously horror fans know this, but anybody that might forget, Jason Voorhees was not the killer in Friday the 13th. The plan wasn't to turn it into this giant thing. And so you just have a story about a kid, and he's drowned in the lake, and his mom is the one, sorry, spoiler alert, but his mom is the one killing off everybody. And, it's like, now you never think of that. You don't think it's Pamela Voorhees as, the mean killer from Friday the 13th. But she is. She's the one that started it. She's why Jason is doing this. And so the point with all of that rambling is that that's what Candy Corn is. And I made the very unpopular decision of taking a lot of those juicy bits out of Candy Corn, deliberately putting them into other scripts that I was confident and hoped, would turn into other films. But that's how I'm looking at it. Like, let's say we make the 3 scripts that I have, right? Mm-hmm. And you go back and look at all 3 Candy Corns. It will all be, the third one will make the first one much clearer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, horror films are always doing that. The sequels are always answering questions and introducing new plot ideas that support something that you didn't understand before. And so, that's my plan. I want to do the other ones. I want to do that with Candy Corn. It's definitely been brought up by lots of people now that Candy Corn has come out. People want to do the second or third one, or I've even talked about, I think it would be cool to do like a mini series where I take the next couple ideas and turn it into 10 to 13 hour-long episodes that tells the whole story of everything that is Candy Corn. But I don't know. Right now I'm focusing on another script that I'm actually writing with my fiance, who produced and did all the color grading in Candy Corn. And I'm super excited about what we're doing with that. It's totally unrelated to Candy Corn. It's horror, but it's not slasher. It's something completely original and new. And it feels really good to be working on something that is not paying homage to anything else. It feels really good to be working in a sandbox that's just original weird ideas that I when you're paying homage to things like these slashers, there's a lot of, you can call them tropes that you sort of, have to tap into to pay that, respect to those films. And those can often be confused or misunderstood as cheap or lazy or whatever, because everybody's seen them a million times. For me, I'm really excited and proud about what we did and excited to do more within the Candy Corn world. But right now I'm really excited to be just writing stuff that's in my head with no limits, not worrying about, a slasher wouldn't do that, or, we have to say that or do this. Just the gloves are off and I'm writing exactly what's in my head, not having to stay within any certain parameters. And that's what I'm really excited to shoot next.
Is it a feature you're working on, or is it a series?
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool.
No, it's a feature film.
Awesome.
And it's intentional. Right now, it's being written as a standalone thing. I'm not, I don't believe in writing things to deliberately want to turn them into franchises or sequels or whatever. Candy Corn sort of naturally took that course, I think, as I was writing and had to move stuff here and there and cut things out because of time and budget. And I think the characters demand, now that the fans are latching onto them and latching onto Jacob and people want to see more, that's great. But with this new film that we're getting ready to do, it's, I just want to make one really strong, standalone, original thing.
Cool, man. Well, I definitely look forward to it. We've been talking about slashers, and obviously tomorrow is Thanksgiving. I am very curious. Have you ever seen the movie Blood Rage?
Of course.
Okay, awesome. And what do you think of that movie? Like, what's your opinion of it? Because it's seemed to be gathering some like resurgence ever since Arrow re-released it, and I think more and more people are starting to appreciate it for a weird slasher out of Jacksonville.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because a lot of those films like Blood Rage and The Mutilator and Slumber Party Massacre and Sorority House Massacre and all of these movies that sort of came out, in the wake of like Halloween specifically, they have this sort of, the basic structure of a slasher. What I think is cool is Blood Rage is really fun. I think it's funny that it's technically a Thanksgiving movie, but they didn't really beat that over the head too much as far as like I don't know what they could have done that would have made it corny, but it's cool. I mean, it's not like up there as like something that's inspired me or that I love as much as some of the other things that I love. But I would say Blood Rage is one of those ones within. It's one of the better ones from that sort of like post Halloween. Let's just make a slasher.
Yeah.
Just to make a slasher. And I think that's even then was probably really difficult to make something original. I forget which one it is. It might be Sorority House Massacre. There's one of the ones that was just like, it was just like to the T Halloween. It was like every character was named, like Michael and Annie. And it's like there's just no creativity at all. And so I want to see something like Blood Rage. Like, that's pretty creative. That the wrong twin is out there, and it creates narratively it creates an interest and a conflict between all of the characters, and the antagonist as far as, is he the one brother or is he the other one? And yeah, interesting.
Well, I definitely appreciate your insight. And here at CineDump, we let the doers know how they're doing, and you're doing just fine. Again, I appreciate your time, and once again, happy Thanksgiving. And we'll keep keep an eye on the Instagram and follow up, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. And you have a good one, buddy. Thank you for your time. Adios.
All right, you too. Happy Thanksgiving.